What is your name and who are we talking about today?
My name is Jocelyn.
My name is Mark and we're talking about my late wife, Rachel.
My mum who passed away about 3 years ago now to pancreatic cancer.
What does grief mean to you?
Grief fundamentally is an overwhelming, powerful emotion that takes over everything while you're suffering it, certainly in the early days.
An unexpressed love that you have for that person that has no way of getting to them anymore, and it's essentially like a longing for that person and all the love you have for them.
Does grief end?
I think the intensity of grief diminishes over time. Does it end? I don't think so. I don't know because this is year 4, we're now entering 4 years after Rachel died. But the intensity that I felt in the first couple of years certainly has lessened. I still recognise and feel aspects of grief to this day constantly.
I wouldn't say that it ends, I would say that it changes and evolves. In the beginning it can look very scary and big, and there's a famous analogy which describes a ball inside a container, and in the beginning that ball fills up the whole container, and over time as years go by the ball stays the same size but the container gets bigger. And I think that's a really good way of explaining grief, because the grief itself, the size of it is the same. Your life around it changes and grows, which changes your perception of grief and how you approach it.
And does grief get better now that you're 3 years along?
It's gotten easier.
Yes, it feels like it was yesterday, and it also feels like a long time ago, and it changes depending on the day. I describe my grief as coming in waves. So when a wave comes upon me, it feels very intense sometimes, and it can feel like it happened yesterday. And then sometimes it feels like so long ago, and I look at my life and I think how far I've come and how much my life has changed compared to then. It gets better in the sense of you learn to cope with it better, but not that it ever goes away.
One is able to think about the future more. One can do all the things that I was not able to do back when it was very, very, very raw.
What has helped you get through it?
For the first 9-10 months I did a lot of walking. You don't know what's helpful at the time, you just are in something that is overwhelming and it carries you, really. But looking back, you start to recognise things that were very, very helpful. Meeting with good friends over coffee was another. Having things to get up for that depended on you. I had 2 cats that needed looking after, I had 2 young adult children to look after.
I think finding pockets of wisdom. So one of those is through a book called Big Panda Tiny Dragon. So when my mum was in the hospice and she was really ill, one of her colleagues brought in the book for her to help her. And it's basically a book with artwork of a big panda and a tiny dragon, and them going through a journey together and encountering many problems and obstacles in life. Then she gave it to me, and I like to look at that because it helps.
What helps you remember her?
I've done a number of things. I did a little book. Rachel took a lot of photographs, and a lot of photographs were taken of her when she was ill, particularly ones with her and friends and family who visited her in the hospice. It was remarkable to me over the 6 weeks that we had with her after she was diagnosed, how people are smiling in those photographs, especially when they're with her, and how often she would be smiling in those photographs. So I got all these together and made a little book.
And any final words to people who are going through something similar?
Everyone always says that the first year is the worst and the hardest, and in some ways it is, but I actually found the second year harder than the first year, and part of that is because of how much people think that you stop needing them. And I've actually found comfort in other cultures that talk about it and celebrate it more, and remember the good things about that person, and also are able to talk about and express their emotions more, because no emotion is too big when you're grieving, and it's important that you have community around you, and it's important to normalise death and grief.
There is not really much experience as you go through life that's similar to grief in a way that it just completely takes you over. Grief is not a problem to solve, it's a journey to walk through, and you will walk through it, you will get through it. It will take time. Time is your friend, and I think finally I think to realise it's a life journey. To the degree that you love somebody and have lost, with the degree that you grieve. So if you love wholeheartedly and passionately, your grief will be intense, and that's as it should be. As hard as it is, it's reflective of the love you had in the first place, and you can't do one without the other.